The New York Islanders need to make changes if they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender anytime soon. But what is that going to mean for this offseason? We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X, formerly Twitter, at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things all year long right now during the offseason, hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we will have it for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it is great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you. Game time or anytime. Change is a tough thing in many people's lives. And the old expression is that the older we get, the more difficult change becomes for us. But when you look at the New York Islanders, and the fact is, over the last 3 seasons, this team did not make the playoffs 3 years ago, eliminated in the first round in 6 games last year, eliminated in the first round in 5 games this past season. That's 3 years without a playoff series win when more or less you brought back the same core of players. Yeah, there have been some changes on the periphery, but the basic core of this team is more or less the same. The only significant difference is they're getting older now than they were 3, 4, 5 years ago when they made those 2 runs to the Stanley Cup final. And we have a new coach now in Patrick Roy, who joined the team mid-season and did have some impact. The team did play better under Patrick Roy than they did under Lane Lambert, at least record-wise. And I think their overall consistency and performance on the ice, while still the consistency thing was still a big issue, but I think they got more consistent and played better overall under Roy than they did under Lane Lambert. And let's face it, the roster that the Islanders have right now is not the ideal roster to play the Patrick Roy system that he wants to play. If you're going to play the Patrick Roy system, you need a little more team speed. You need to be able to be a little bit more aggressive on the puck. And if you're a step behind, that kind of aggression can lead to penalties. And boy, did we see that very often. In addition to the increased age of this team since they went on those 2 Stanley Cup conference final runs, you look across the board at this Islanders team statistically from last season, and none of the statistics point to this team being a legitimate elite Stanley Cup contender. And you could say, Lou Lamoriello has said how many times, too many times to count, really. I believe in this core, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just do the math, okay? Goals for this year The Islanders scored 245 goals. That ranked them 22nd in the league, bottom third. Goals against, which is something that was part of the Islanders' identity in the past, 18th in the league, a little below the middle of the pack. 258 goals allowed. That's a goal differential, for those of you counting at home, of minus 13. The power play, 19th in the league, 20.3% success rate. Again, a little below average. The penalty kill, dead last in the National Hockey League, 71.5% success rate. Immediately, what this shows us, these four basic numbers, this team is not in the top half of the league in any of these four areas. They're, near the top of the bottom third in goals scored. They're below average in goals against. They're below average in power plays, and they are dead last on the penalty kill. If you're an elite Stanley Cup contender and you look at the teams that are left right now, Florida, more depth, more speed, more physicality than the Islanders, better team defense than the Islanders. Boston, again, maybe a little more top heavy than Florida, deeper on defense, better goaltending this year for sure, better offensively, better on special teams. The Rangers and Hurricanes, both elite special teams. The Canucks, offensively, far better than the Islanders are, and they're in the playoffs right now without their number one goalie for a while. Colorado, Edmonton, the Islanders do not match up on paper, player for player, with any of these teams. Now, you add to the mix the fact that the Islanders do not have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of players with questionable contracts, and they have players that have modified no-trade clauses or no-trade clauses. And as everydayers know, we've said repeatedly on the show, you need to get younger, faster, and stronger, and you don't have a prospect pool with any big-time ready players who are ready to step in the NHL and be impact players, okay? There are guys who may become impact players, but they're a couple of years away minimum. Maybe the most NHL-ready guys would be Samuel Bolduc, if you could still call him a prospect at this point. Maybe Ruslan Ishkakov, Matthew Maggio, probably a year away. William Dufour, probably a year away. And by the way, none of them, Ishkakov, Dufour, Maggio, considered more than fringe NHL players, bottom six kind of forwards. Not that that means they can't contribute, but they're not looked at by most scouts as difference makers right now. So at the end of the day, if you're going to do something, the only option you have is a trade. If you want to make this team better, you have to make trades. And it may mean breaking up some members of the core, whether it's a small move like trading away J.G. Pageau with his modified no-trade clause to free up about $5 million worth of cap space. That would at least allow you to bring in maybe one really good impact player and re-sign your restricted and unrestricted free agents that you want to bring back. Or, there are guys like Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, who may have a little more trade value in the case of Nelson and Palmary, but you may be taking a couple of steps back if you deal them with the hope that you could take a few steps forward. But what I can tell you, without even going into more detail, the numbers don't lie. This team, the way it's put together right now, needs to make changes to bridge the gap between the 8 teams that are still competing for a Stanley Cup and the Islanders. And if they don't do that, if Lou Lamoriello stays put, if this roster doesn't make a significant addition and a significant change between now and the next season, there is very little chance. Look, I'm not saying the team can't get better. I think Ilya Sorokin can have a better season next year than he did this past year. There are other guys who certainly I think might fall off, but I think the team can get incrementally better, but I don't see a major change without a trade. I don't see this team going from either barely making or barely missing the playoffs to, yeah, we're in the same conversation with the Hurricanes, the Canucks, the Avalanche, the Rangers, the Bruins, the Panthers, the Oilers, the teams that are still fighting for the Stanley Cup. You look up and down the league right now, there were no huge upsets in that first round that, you don't have much in the way of wild card teams still in it. The Islanders need to make changes if they hope to change the result. And if Lou Lamoriello doesn't understand that or can't or won't make those changes, at best, we can expect another season of either barely making or barely missing the playoffs, being stuck in that muddy middle where you're not good enough to contend, but not bad enough to really get a rebuild where you can put together an elite team. And I could tell you right now, Islander fans, that is not where this team needs to be. So one thing we definitely need to see from the New York Islanders is change. I just hope that we actually do see it. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will have our player-by-player review of Kyle Palmieri. What was his season like? What can we expect from him going forward? We'll talk about that. Plus, our first look at a prospect who the Islanders may be able to draft this year with the 18th overall pick. We take a look at Jett Luchanko, who the Athletic said would be the Islanders' pick in their first mock draft. Plus, our Islanders' birthday of the day, a scoring forward who the Islanders lost in the expansion draft in 2021. I think this is an easy one. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Islander fans, use your knowledge of the NHL to bet on the Stanley Cup playoffs, whether you want to pick a team to win a series, a game, or even the Stanley Cup. Maybe you want to bet on who's going to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Check out all the odds and options at FanDuel. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we continue our player-by-player look at the season and season in review. We also look ahead to see what some of these guys, what their role might be on the team next year. Everydayers, yesterday we talked about Mike Riley. We've also covered Matt Martin and Oliver Wahlstrom. Today, Kyle Palmary, the Long Island native, Smithtown, 33 years old, now had a great season. 30 goals, which tied his career high, which he set all the way back in 2015, 2016 with the Devils. He played in all 82 games. Staying healthy has been a challenge for Palmary over the course of his career, but 82 games, 30 goals, 54 points. He was a minus 16 in plus minus. 10 of his 30 goals came on the power play. That led the Islanders. 8 game-winning goals, also tops on the team. And his shooting percentage went up, but not significantly. It was 13.8, which is a little above his 12.4 career shooting percentage. Last year it was 13.1, so a slight increase. He's playing a little more than 17 minutes a game and, blocked 42 shots, had 89 hits in 82 games. And look, Palmary, I think, was steady. And when he got hot, he is still the kind of guy who can carry a team. Usually it's for like 4 or 5 games where Palmary, everything he does just ends up in the back of the net, or he just gets some great opportunities and takes advantage of them. And then he'll go a week or 2 weeks where he'll get the odd goal or odd assist, but he's just not firing on all cylinders, and that makes a difference. When he's on, he really helps the Islanders. I said during parts of the season, especially when Palmary was slumping or struggling, that the Islanders only had 3 top 6 forwards by the end of the year. Every day, as you may remember, I apologized to Kyle Palmieri and said, yeah, no, they have 4, and Palms is one of them. And he earned it. 30 goals, getting the job done. You want to see Palmieri be a little bit more consistent. That is certainly something that I don't think that's going to change, because he has been this way his whole career, and a lot of goal scorers are streaky. In the playoffs, he gave you a goal and 2 assists in 5 games, was a -1 plus minus. Again, I don't think he was bad in the playoffs, but he wasn't on one of his hot streaks either. He's earning $5 million a year right now, and Kyle Palmieri has another season. Next year is his last year of his contract. Does that mean the Islanders might be able to find a taker for him either during this offseason or at the trade deadline next year, if they are in a position where, you may want to do that? Yeah, it does. The question is, if he's playing well, you probably want to hang on to him for the playoff drive if the team is in contention. If he's not playing well, then his value is reduced. But I would still say, if the team is struggling and he's not doing well, I could see the Islanders looking to trade Kyle Palmieri at some point during the upcoming season. But hopefully the Islanders are doing well enough that you don't want that to happen. I think Palms, barring a real big shakeup of this roster, is probably going to stay on the second line, get considerable power play time, and be more or less in the same role. He also gives you leadership. I love the fact that he's a Long Island native, and that, he sort of feels, I think Palms feels the energy of playing on Long Island and playing in front of his hometown fans. And, he's been a solid Islander since coming over. I am concerned that he has to stay healthy. That is always a concern with Kyle Palmieri, but we've seen when he's healthy, he's still capable of being a solid second line player who excels on the power play. And I think we will see more of the same. Now, if you are of the belief that the Islanders need to tear this team down and build it back up, almost like a complete rebuild, Kyle Palmieri is probably a guy you would want to move on from, even though he has some good hockey left. You've got the old adage, it's better to trade a guy a year too soon than a year too late. But if the Islanders are going to stick with this core, and I think Lou is mostly going to do that, Kyle Palmieri will probably be an Islander again this year. And if he stays healthy, hopefully he can give you at least another 25 goal season and be productive, because the Islanders need that from Palmieri. It makes a big difference to this organization or this team right now, if Palmieri is playing well and producing, or if he's not playing well or injured, where you just can't get that kind of productivity from him. So I think Palms is a pivotal player, both in terms of possible trades, and if he stays, his performance will be important for the team's success. We'll see how he does next season. All right, we have got more to get to. We're going to take a look at Jett Luchanko, a player the Islanders could draft with the first round pick if indeed they hold on to it. We've got that plus our Islanders birthday of the day, all that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and you could see the view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We're going to do a lot of draft coverage as long as the Islanders have that first round pick, 18th overall. And we're going to start today with Jett Luchanko, who is a center for Guelph in the Ontario League. And The Athletic did a mock draft, their first, and they had the Islanders picking Luchanko with that 18th overall pick. And what The Athletic said, Luchanko's stock has been going sharply upward in the second half of the season into likely a mid-first due to his speed, compete, and playmaking. He gives some needed center depth to the Islanders' system. What do we know about Luchanko? Well, he won't turn 18 until August. He is 5'11", about $185. This past year for Guelph, 68 games played. He went from 5 goals and 14 points in 46 games a year ago to 20 goals and 74 points in 68 games this year. He was a minus 13 plus minus, had 3 assists in 4 playoff games this year with Guelph. And, the thing about Jett Luchanko that I like, number one, he's got speed, which the Islanders really like in their lineup and need in their lineup. And again, he's 17 years old. He's not going to play for the Islanders for at least a couple of years, okay? But to get some speedy offensive players into the organization would be something that this team is going to need. He also is very smart. He's got a high hockey IQ. he was actually voted in the top 3 as the smartest and hardest working player from the OHL's Western Conference by the coaches. That was a coaches poll. So that is certainly good. He's more of a playmaker right now than he is a goal scorer, but he is not afraid to go into those dirty areas and battle for the puck. Got to add a little strength, but almost every 17, 18, 19-year-old player does. But his speed and his forechecking ability is very, very good. And I think this is important. He also is good without the puck. He closes gaps. He doesn't allow his player to get time and space when they're coming into the offensive zone. Overall, this is a guy who I think would be a solid fit in the Islanders system under Patrick Watt if he continues to produce. And Hadi Kalakesh of Locked On NHL Prospects, he said there's enough skill to make him worth the first round. The combination of raw athletic ability, high motor, solid skating, and defensive acumen makes Luchanko an easy-to-project player. So, wanted to start covering the draft a little bit, and we mentioned we'll do this as long as the Islanders hold on to that pick, Jett Luchanko, and we will maybe have some guests on to talk about him and some other possible draft picks for the Islanders at 18 between now and the draft, which is coming up in just a couple of months. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. I think this was an easy one, but we are a day late. So Wednesday was the 34th birthday of former Islanders winger Jordan Eberle. He's a native of Regina, Saskatchewan, drafted by the Oilers in the first round, 22nd overall back in 2008, made his NHL debut in 2010-2011 with the Oilers, and in his second NHL season, scored 34 goals. That remains a career high. Stayed with Edmonton through 2016-2017, then joined the Islanders in 2017-2018. 25 goals, 59 points in his first year on the island, and then spent 3 more seasons with the Islanders, never surpassing the 20-goal mark again with the Isles, but providing them with some good play. And you got to remember also, he had 16 goals in both 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021. But had they played a full schedule, which they didn't because of COVID, maybe he does likely top the 20-goal mark. He's now with the Seattle Kraken, played 78 games for them this year, 17 goals, 44 points. He has now surpassed 1,000 career games, 1,018, and he has 299 career goals. So assuming he plays next year, his next goal will be a milestone for him, the magic 300. One of his best games as an Islander, how about October 28th, 2017, Islanders visiting Nashville to take on the Preds. Yaroslav Halak, the goalie for the Islanders, UC Saros, the goalie for Nashville, and Eberle, our Islanders' birthday of the day, opens up the scoring in the first period on the power play. Ryan Pollock and Anthony Beauvillier with the assist, and it's 1-0 Islanders. Later on in the second period, with the Islanders up 2-1, Eberle strikes again, this time Matthew Barzal and Brock Nelson with the assist. In the third period, Eberle assisting on a goal by John Tavares. The Islanders down Nashville by a score of 6-2. And in this game, Jordan Eberle, 2 goals, an assist. He's a +2. He had the game-winning goal, 4 shots on goal, and did all of that in just 13 minutes and 47 seconds of ice time. So Jordan Eberle, a guy who's still active in the NHL, but the Islanders lost in the expansion draft to Seattle. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow on the show, we will continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders roster from this past season, and we'll take a look at Ilya Sorokin tomorrow, so make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.